Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 5. This week, we're going to talk about leading teams. And for those of you who are wondering why I always have my screen like this and not full screen, it's because when I do full screen, it switches it out and then you just see me in presentation mode. So it's kind of a strange deal. So anyway, this is easier for us both. So we're going to hop into it. Let's get started. Leadership. What is leadership? We all think we have a good idea of what leadership is, but really it's the idea of influencing others, right? We want a desired result and we need to influence others in order to act on our behalves or with us as collaborators to achieve a certain specific goal. All right. So what are some of the features of leadership? Well, it's continuous, right? You can be a leadership for a period of time. As we've learned, there are certain types of teams, but it is continuous throughout the life of the project or whatever it is that you are trying to accomplish. It is this idea that I'm going to have my experience lend itself to a group of individuals so that we can attain these common goals. So leadership is a multitude of different things. Some of the things that leadership does is it motivates employees to do a certain, to take a certain action or get to a certain goal. It creates confidence because leadership should, with a good leader will inspire confidence that they know what they're doing, and that it also motivates creating confidence in others as well through empowerment. And then it builds morale. Without morale, we're not able to get anywhere very quickly. So there are a number of different leadership theories. I'm going to focus on 4 here, and we'll jump right into what each one of these is. Charismatic leadership theory. This is known as the great man theory, right? This is somebody who has a lot of charisma. Not all charisma is used for good things. Sometimes the worst type of leader, ultimately the one who leads to achieve negative results viewed by humanity, can be very charismatic. For example, we can think of somebody like Adolf Hitler. He was incredibly charismatic, got millions of people to follow him, even though his goals were not one that we would consider positive in nature. There are positive charismatic leaders. We might think of Martin Luther King as one of those type of leaders. Gandhi, certainly. These are charismatic leaders. So these types of people that we think of as a charismatic leader. So these are people who just have some sort of innate, inborn leadership quality, right? These are the people who kind of have some of that it factor as well as competence to go along with it. These are types of qualities that can't necessarily be enhanced by education. You can be wise, you can be educated and have additional experience, but this is an innate sort of quality to an individual who's incredibly charismatic. So what about trait theory? Well, one of the things that trait theory is it's these types of qualities defined by the individual. So what does it take to make a successful leader? So these can be skills that are honed in a way. They're acquirable traits. I want to be good at time management. I want to be good at motivating. I want to be good at understanding others. I want to be good at process development. I want to be good at project management. These are acquired traits that one can do to hone themselves as a better leader. What about behavioral theory? This is a type of leadership that's known by a person's actions, right? Strong behavioral leadership. They want to practice what they preach, in a sense, right? They have people who are that kind of come into 2 different groups here. This kind of task related function, they're problem solvers. They aid in this sort of thing. And the group maintenance, they mediate disputes very well. They ensure people feel valued. They're cohesive type of groups. So those are a couple of different behavioral theories. Okay, so there are 2 different types of leaders' behavior if we're talking about behavioral theory. One of those is functional behavior. Functional behavior is where we can really influence people positively. We have really effective communication skills. We're very strongly motivating. It's just a real positive sort of behavior if you think about this functional, meaning that it does function well, or this dysfunctional, it does not function well. A lot of times this is a negative motivation. This is not having emotional intelligence. They're maybe encourage people to compete with one another. They encourage silos. That's a dysfunctional behavioral trait. What about situation? This is also known as contingency theory. This is determined specifically by the environment and the situation you're in. For example, if you've got two companies that are merging together, someone who is very strong in change management would be someone you would want to lean in on that particular point. What about the type of person that doesn't become a leader until they have to? Right. You see these people all the time, and they, movies, documentaries, things like that. This individual who just kind of lays back and is easygoing, and emergent situation occurs, a natural disaster occurs, and suddenly they're a leader. I mean, they're a really good leader, and that's very situational in nature. So we do see that, and oftentimes these individuals don't know that they're that good of a leader until something happens, and then after the fact, they don't lead much anymore. We've even seen politicians that were strong leaders during periods of strife or moments of political instability, and then they fall off, and they're not quite as good when there's not this sort of chaos, if you will. So let's think about these sort of leadership styles here. There's a couple here. Autocratic leadership. This is known as really authoritarian. I can't even say it tonight, so just let me go with it. Directive, monolithic. It's this is a person who centralizes the decision making with themselves. They may be perceived to be a negative type of leader because they really are not engaging. I mean, they oftentimes lack this transparency. They lack this idea that I'm going to get feedback. I'm going to get buy-in. This is what I say, and this is what you do. And so that tends to be an autocratic leader. So there are different types of autocratic leaders, right? They're not all bad. A strict autocrat, this is someone who, this is the type of negative motivation, right? I'm going to have you compete against you. Why are you not doing as well as this person? That's a type of negative motivation. They criticize subordinates. You need to be doing this. You're doing it wrong. You should be doing it better, versus praising or using the sandwich technique. They'll impose penalties if things are not met. Oftentimes we have these sort of quotas or things that must be met, and there's strict penalties. So it feels like a very punitive type of leader is a strict autocrat. This benevolent autocrat, as it sounds, this is somebody who centralizes the decision maker in him, but it's a very positive sort of motivation style. We see these benevolent autocrats. They're well loved, even though they are clearly the decision maker. So that's sort of an interesting sort of way of going about it. People default to them. They really are in a well-loved type of situation. Okay, what about the incompetent autocrat? Okay, sometimes this happens where you have an incompetent autocrat. Maybe they do not necessarily have the skills to be in a leadership position. Sometimes you find this with situations of nepotism. And I'm going to turn my fan off. And in situations of nepotism, maybe an individual hasn't worked their way up through the ranks, or maybe they don't have as much hands-on experience at the organization. And these can be very incompetent. Is not always a friendly word, but they can be incompetent because they lack the capacity to understand the organizational processes or the culture of the organization and then continue that forth. So we do see that as well. Okay, what are some of the advantages to these autocratic styles? Well, a lot of times people like to be led, right? I always say that ultimately people enjoy structure. Now, too much structure can smother a person or make them feel like they're being micromanaged, but oftentimes this structure is a good capacity for individuals to work in, particularly if they've got a highly process-driven type of organization. Structure is key. You wouldn't want there to be a lot of autonomy if you are, for example, in the military, or you are on a surgical team. You would want there to be a great deal of structure and have an autocrat where there's centralized decision making in those types of situations. You don't want people going rogue in surgery. You don't want people going rogue in a military operation. So let's see, it often allows for quick pivoting because the leader is able to make a change and then implement that, and others will follow it fairly quickly. What about participative leadership? This is a demographic. It's a consultative style. It is where a group of individuals contribute and then they share that responsibility. And then you have someone who is leading. I hope that your individual teams this semester have been participative in nature. You might all agree on something, but ultimately you tend to see somebody raising themselves to the top a little bit and kind of helping manage the process and make sure the workflow is all getting accomplished. Often this person is probably the one who's uploading that document at the end of the week for the group's sake. Okay, what are the advantage of participative management? Well, they can be highly motivating, right? It creates high productivity because people feel like they have buy-in. They feel like they have shared responsibility. It increases that morale because they don't feel like they're being overlooked. So this is a strong way of managing, and it's what we really now see in a collaborative nature in most organizations, particularly those organizations where individuals are wearing multiple hats. This participative style is really almost necessary in order to be very efficient. Okay, so what are the limitations? There's always some limitations. So the complex nature of an organization, if it's very process driven, then that autocratic style makes more sense, right? You wouldn't want a participative style of leadership in a military or a surgical operation, like I was saying before, or something that's highly technical. You'd want somebody that's very much overseeing it. If you are building a skyscraper, you really do need a strong autocratic leadership that is giving these, this timeline, this is how things are being done, and making sure that everybody's doing it a very certain way. You don't want people just deciding whatever they want to build, or else if you did, you got to worry about actually living or working in that particular skyscraper. Okay, some people in a participative leadership can use this as a way to covertly manipulate other people. Some people can phrase things and say like, they're trying to phrase constructive criticism, but it's actually just criticism. Now, sometimes constructive criticism is meant to be, to better others, but sometimes constructive criticism is just because somebody wants to display that as a way of being negative on the team. So these are some of the limitations of participative leadership. There are 6 traits of leaders. I won't dig down too much into this, but drive, do I have the drive to move forward and move others forward? Do I have a desire to lead, right? Some people just simply don't have a desire to lead. Like I talked about the folks that, emerge as leaders in these sort of situational contexts. Integrity. Am I honest? Do other people trust me? Do I have self-confidence? If I don't have self-confidence, it's very difficult to inspire others to have confidence in me. Am I intelligent? And intelligence is kind of an interesting thing, right? You can be intelligent but not wise. Just because you've amassed information doesn't mean that you're a good leader. A good leader will have both information and education that they've amassed along with experience, and that is wisdom. So I would say more than intelligence, are they wise? Or do they have the capacity to become wise? Do they have the ability to pair their intellectual interest and information processing with the experience that they are getting? And do they have job relevant knowledge? Are they able to actually, because they understand what is happening and what they're asking others to do? Okay. Empowerment. What is empowerment? This provides people the freedom to do what they want rather than getting them to do what you want. That's kind of an odd thing, right? So empowerment, in the best case, understands that there's a goal and you are encouraging toward that goal, and that's what they want as well. So what you want and what they want are highly aligned. But empowerment, it overcomes these feelings of I'm not a real part of this team. It gives me power. It creates self-confidence, and it's a pathway to creating future leaders as well. What are some of the results of empowerment? Well, these employees statistically have been found to be more productive and happier. Individuals say, that it's so much better for me to feel like I have a say and I have an equal stake in some of the decision making, and that I'm making an impact. And that is what the result of being empowered. So what are the differences between power and empowerment, right? So power is the capacity to get others to do what you want. You're coercing them in some way. It comes from an external source. It leads to a lot of competition. Empowerment, again, is the capacity to get others to do what they want instead. All right. So what is self-efficacy? Well, this is a sense of personal confidence. Do I believe in myself and that I have the ability to perform the tasks? All right. Okay, what is self-determination? It's a little bit of a different thing. This is a sense of personal choice. I have an option to do this or not. Is this really optionally mandatory, or is it just optional? Those are two different things, right? I oftentimes joke and say, sometimes you're given the courtesy of being asked because it's optionally mandatory. Other times you're given the courtesy of being asked because you truly have an opportunity to make a determination on whether or not you would like to do something or not. You have to decide which one of those scenarios you're in. Okie dokie. What if you lack empowerment? What are those negative consequences? People feel helpless. They feel alienated. They feel a little bit used and abused, as if their voice doesn't matter and they are just working for someone else. And we see a lot of lower income and a lot of the lower income blue collar jobs that feel this sort of sense of powerlessness and helplessness. That leads to a higher turnover rate. It also leads to this, this kind of cyclical thing of where they're continuing to perpetuate their social status, and it's a very difficult situation to be in. Okay, how do we develop empowerment? Well, there's a few ways that we have to do this. We have to first make sure that we're all on the same page about what our goal is, and then we have to empower others to come up with the best way to get there. We've got to be able to model the correct behavior, and then we've got to be able to provide support and show those people that we are leading that we're ingrained just as much as they are, and kind of, provide them with the idea that here's what we can do. Let's connect our outcomes. Let's connect our tactics, if you will, with the ability to get to that specific goal that we've all agreed upon. Okay, the other thing we have to do is we have to model successful behaviors. If I'm asking someone to do something as a manager, I never would ask somebody to do something that I couldn't or wouldn't do myself. That is what we mean by modeling successful behaviors. All right, we have to provide support, right? Support comes in a variety of different ways. Perhaps it's vocalized. Perhaps an individual needs praise in front of other individuals. Perhaps someone needs to have more education, and that's a good way for us to provide support. Sometimes individuals need personalized feedback. We need the ability to provide that feedback as well. So there's this kind of duality and this back and forth of feedback that we're receiving. Some people need to be coached. Some people need to be, wildly recognized. And that's what I was saying by the public recognition. So there's a lot of different ways that support can be offered. And it's important that you understand the person who's working for you and what motivates them by the type of support you're providing. Some people just need to be listened to. Some people, so different types of people. Some people would feel very uncomfortable with the public recognition. Private recognition is fine, or additional education is the types of things that they thrive on. Okay, so these positive emotions, how do we arouse positive emotions? We want to make sure that we're sincere. And I don't know that is necessarily on here, but sincerity would be my number one thing. Be sincere. Don't just tell somebody they're the best, most awesome, great, excellent, wonderful ever if you don't mean that. Find what you're sincere about and give them the positive emotions attached to that sincerity. This use of superlatives is wonderful, but when you go overboard with it, it does tend to feel disingenuous and insincere. All right, clarify, how this has impacted the team in a positive way, and clarify how they can move forward and continue to impact it in an even larger respect. Make sure that you're understanding the individual and the types of positive emotions, and if they have that trust and that mutual respect as well. Okay, you need to provide information. People don't know if you don't communicate. If you're not providing information relevant to the task, if you're not providing, one of the things when I go in and consult with companies that I find, communication is the number one thing that most companies struggle with, which you would think it wouldn't be that difficult. Companies with the strongest culture still have communication issues. And part of that is a lot of times they don't know how to communicate problems. And that's the thing, do I communicate it directly to my boss? Do I go over my boss? What's the nature of communicating a problem, and what constitutes a problem? What am I empowered to solve myself, and what do I need my supervisor to help me solve? These are probably some of the most basic things that I see in consulting with organizations who are struggling to implement a strong communication plan. A strong communication plan makes everybody, happier, more productive, and more efficient. It is remarkable how just that much can change the overall culture and how profitable an organization is in the long run. Okay, you need to provide resources. Oftentimes people cannot be at their top notch if you're not willing to provide them the resources to do a good job. Those resources could be technology. Those resources could be inputs. Those resources could be training. There's so many different resources that an individual needs, but you need to listen to them when they're saying that they don't have the tools to do their job and figure out a way to provide those resources to get, to make sure that their lives are easier. Those are going to be happier employees. They're going to be more productive. You need to, establish mechanisms to create confidence in your employees, right? You need to be fair. It's part of the reason why students who ask me if they can have an extension on an assignment, I say, sure, you have a 15% per day penalty for being late. And I more than once have been told by a student, that's unfair. It actually isn't. It's unfair to the person who turned it in on time with the same amount of time to do the work. That's who it would be unfair to. And so I oftentimes have to kind of explain it in that way. So you have to be consistent, you have to be fair, and sometimes that fairness feels unfair to the person who's asking for the extenuating circumstances to be for something else. And so it is a very tough one. The same reason why someone says, yeah, I couldn't do this because I was ill. And I totally feel empathetic to that. And we've all been ill and not been able to attend work or some sort of, class or something like that. The challenge is then I'm asked to make a determination on whether this person's sickness was more or less important than this person's, losing their internet or having their computer or having their child sick or, having to work or go on a business trip. It puts me in a precarious position of making those subjective qualifications. And that would not inspire confidence in all of you. You need to kind of know going in, this is what the result will be of that. I always tell people, if I was at a job and I started at 8 a.m. and my coworker consistently came in an hour or two late and got paid the same amount, would that be fair? No. And that is why there are policies where there are, late policies and things like that in the classroom. It's the same thing that is relevant to the workplace. Okay, what are some of the inhibitors to empowerment? Insecurities, right? Sometimes people you're too insecure to be able to take that lead and make decisions. They get paralyzed to make decisions and they prefer to be led. Some people just have an absolute need for control and won't give that over to the people that they are working with and managing. So, I love this little thing. You're a control freak if your ideas are always the best ideas. And those are the individuals who really, as leaders, struggle to empower those who they are managing. What are some of the advantage of engaging others? I think it's important to realize that these efficient decisions, it also demonstrates trust in the people that you're managing. I always say, you do your job. And if you're unable to do your job, I've put you in the wrong position. You're not the wrong person. I've just put you in the wrong position. And I've asked you to do something that you're not able to do successfully. And I would rather somebody communicate with me that they don't feel capable of doing something successfully so that I can reallocate the resources on the team to do something else. Okay, what are some guidelines for effective delegation? How do we do this? Well, we got to begin with the end in mind. What's the goal? Where are we getting to? That's how we delegate. We're always tracking along to that end point of whatever the goal is. We've got to identify boundaries, okay? To what level or am I going to allow these individuals to be empowered, help with the decision-making, be democratic about it? At some point, there is a line. We can't let it go to the point where there's conflict, so we have to establish some boundaries. We have to specify the level of initiative, right? We got individuals who are all doing different things. We've got to make sure that some of it is, we're not just focusing on the fun bits, right? The tough bits or the bits that most people don't want to work on are also getting done. We allow participation. We allow people to participate and have some level of autonomy and collaboration. We match authority with responsibility. I wouldn't ask you to do something that I would not do. We're very capable and paired with that respect. We provide that adequate support, right? That could be technology, that could be feedback, that could be education, that could be information. There's so many different ways that we can support individuals. We focus on accountability. You know, we want you to own what you're doing, good or bad. We want you to own it, and then we can move forward. You know, it was interesting. I had a student who wrote me an email and said, "I am so sorry. I did not get this assignment in on time, and I can't blame anybody but myself because I didn't manage my time wisely. This information was up there from day one, and I simply didn't manage my time well, and I'll do better next time." I wrote back and I said, "I am so pleased that I heard this, because I promise you, your professors have heard every excuse more than once, even the ones that seem wild and unique." And I'm so pleased that there was that self-awareness for an individual to just be honest. I simply didn't manage my time, and I waited till the last minute. And when I did, something happened. So I think that's a really good, strong sense of accountability. And people respect that a lot more as well. Be consistent, right? Don't do one thing for another that you don't do with this one. If this one has a has a child who is sick, but this one has a pet who is sick, maybe that pet is like their child. You have to be very consistent in how you're holding the line. You can't tell the person with the sick pet that they can't go to the vet, but tell the person with the sick child they can go to their child's doctor. You've got to be consistent. Either it's yes or it's a no, but there's be consistent across the board. Avoid upward delegation. Don't have them telling you what you should be doing. That is not a good fit. You don't need them to deflect their duties onto you because they've realized that you know how to do everything and that you'll take on the responsibilities that they just don't like, because all parts of work have things we just don't like. And you need to clarify the consequences. If you don't do something, this is the consequence. If you don't come in to work on time, you're not going to get paid. If you continue not to come into work on time, you're going to be written up or you're not going to have a job. These are the consequences to create equity and fairness. Okay, folks, that was leadership in a nutshell. I am glad that you popped in to watch it, and we will see you in the next lecture. Bye-bye.